of several parent universities. My name is Dr. Utevia Tolbert, and I will be presenting to you today the Student Code of Conduct. Before we get started, I just want to take a moment to warn you up front that we will definitely do a lot of work where you will have to engage me in a conversation. This is not a sit and get. It is going to require that you become engaged so that you will remember what it is that we're teaching you about the Student Code of Conduct. If you have questions that are relevant at that point during the presentation, I'm going to ask that you will respectfully hold 1 minute, because then I'll provide an opportunity at the end of the presentation to be able to answer your question. As you all are walking in, if you would please grab a Student Code of Conduct. And the Student Code of Conduct is available to you both in English and in Spanish. The Spanish version of the book is located in the back. You will also need a small bag of M&Ms along with the score or the game card for the game. And also, if you would like, you're welcome to take one of the additional sheet of paper, so that you can capture any questions that you may have that you want to ask later on. So let's get started. Today's agenda. Before you leave today, we want to make sure that you have felt welcome, you understood the purpose of our work. We're gonna do a little breaking the ice. I know that people do not enjoy participating in icebreakers. However, I think you will enjoy this one because it will allow you to eat M&Ms at the end. We're also going to do a quick overview of the Code of the Student Conduct. There are 44 prohibited behaviors in there, and unfortunately tonight we don't have a lot of time to actually dig deeper into all 44 of those, but I think you will like the activity that follows that, which is our scavenger hunt. So at the elementary level, we used to say we're going on a bear hunt. So at our level, we're going to say we're going on a scavenger hunt so that we can move quickly through the Code of Conduct. And then, of course, our closing, at which time I will provide an opportunity for us to ask questions. Almost went over this, but just a reminder, by the end of this presentation, you will know the purpose of the Code of Conduct. You're gonna also know how the Code of Conduct applies to the work that we do and to our students in Clarke County School District. You'll also become aware of some of the definitions of the prohibited behaviors and the suggested discipline matrix that is used at the state level as well as in the district. You'll also better understand our parents' roles and responsibilities with the work. And of course, last but not least, what CCSD is doing to support students and what interventions we are providing to our students as we are doing the work. So the best part of it all, breaking the ice. You should have a small bag of M&Ms. You should have a game card, and it looks something like this. What I am going to ask that you do is take a few minutes, and of course we don't have a lot of minutes, but take a few minutes to open up your M&Ms. Don't eat them yet because you're going to have them. And what I want you to do is take a moment and read what's on the game card and choose the M&Ms that align with the box. So example, where it says blue, you're gonna take a blue M&M, and the box reads, share a school fact or complete the sentence. When I go to my child's school, I feel comfortable. Another example would be using the brown one. Describe your favorite memory about your child's education or complete the sentence. The most meaningful part of this semester has been. So that's going to get us talking a little bit more about what's happening in our schools and our schools community, as well as allow you all to get to know each other. So if you will take a few moments, I'm gonna step away from the mic and move down within the audience. And again, we're gonna share out. We don't have a lot of time to share it out, but I am going to ask for those that are here with me, if you will share out with us one of those boxes. So we'll take about 3 minutes. Awesome, thank you. Next. Yes. Thank you. And the last one. Yes, sir. Awesome, thank you. And so I am also going to participate, and I'm going to choose brown, although I'm not eating any M&Ms right now. I promise you I do have some here, but unfortunately I cannot eat them and speak at the same time. The most meaningful part of this semester has been watching the excitement and just level of respect that has occurred at Cedar Shoals High School this year. I'm new to the admin team, but the level of school spirit that's there, just watching our students smile and feel safe and know that we have a team of people that are around them has been awesome. And so I know I probably shouldn't do this, but I'm gonna give a shout out to our admin team and our staff there because they are definitely working hard and our students are responding well. So that's been the best part of the semester. Now, I'll also switch over and answer the orange one because as well as I speak about Cedar Shoals, my daughter actually attends Clarke Central High School. And the best part or my favorite thing about her school is, honestly, David Ragsdale. He's that person for my student or my child and was for my oldest daughter as well. And so knowing that there's someone there that's going to see about her while we are working hard seeing about others is definitely soothing to my heart, and knowing that he's holding her accountable as well. So that completes our colorful conversations, and it actually sets the tone for the rest of the work that we're doing. So we will take a look at our next slide, which is our strategic plan priorities, right? So with everything that Clarke County School District does, we have to do it with a purpose. And it needs to align back to our work, the district strategic plan, and with the work that we're doing tonight on the Student Code of Conduct, it directly aligns with our strategic priority number 3, which is climate and culture, and a part of the colorful conversations that we just spoke about or we just engaged in all reflected back to the culture and climate of our schools. So for us, goal number 3 is providing a welcome environment and a positive school and district culture for students, families, and employees. We often want to forget about our employees, but believe it or not, our Student Code of Conduct helps support the work that they do too. Under that, we have 2 objectives. The first one is we will provide an environment in which students and staff feel safe, supported, and accepted. I think we mentioned a little bit about all 3 of those as well. And 3.2 is develop actions and processes to ensure equity and integrated into all aspects of our district operations. And so that is part of the work of the Student Code of Conduct. Are there any questions so far around that? Great. So, what is the Student Code of Conduct? I would like to say it's just this blue book that for years and years and years, it just kind of was given out at the beginning of the school year, and there was a piece of paper that said, hey, I received this, but no one ever took the time to really engage and look in the book to see what was in there, right? And so then when we have an issue and we apply consequences and or rewards, everyone is so shocked, like, where did that come from? Well, it's a set of student behavior expectations that's developed by Clarke County School District to create an environment in every school that is conducive to teaching and learning. Now, that sounds like a bunch of nothing, but again, it directly relates to the strategic priority number 3 and those 2 objectives that we just went over. We really want for our staff, students, and our community to believe in the work that we're doing, to see the evidence of the work that we're doing, and we want to provide that environment where people feel safe and teachers can teach. This is the foundation of that. Why is it important? One is the law. So the Georgia law 20-2735 requires that every school board adopt a student code of conduct that includes the standards for students' behaviors and the consequences for when the students violate that code. It also requires that our parents have an opportunity to have a say in that every year as we are reviewing it and going through it. So usually around January or February, we will begin to meet to go through the student code of conduct to see if there are any changes that need to be made. Sometimes, and one of the guests just said, sometimes our students decide or they write the student code of conduct. That may be true depending on what they decide they want to engage in at that time. However, the law also dictates what will go in the book and what will not go into the book. So we'll begin to do that work, at which time we bring the changes to our Discipline Task Force Committee, which is comprised of several of our administrators in the district. We go through it, we talk about it, and then we push it over to our school board, and then they have the final say. Before they approve it, it actually goes out for public comment. So hopefully, many of you were able to see some of the changes that took place before it was approved. Maybe back in July, I think is when it was approved. So hopefully you all got an opportunity to see that. But if you did not, let's talk about them. So you will need your code of conduct handbook. And if you turn to the very back, you're gonna see a section on our bus suspensions. One moment, let me get that page for you. I should know it by heart, right? I know it when I'm using it to apply, but we will get into when I will need to use that. But if you look on page 39, although this specific piece about the bus is included throughout our matrix that's in the Code of Conduct, and you all will get an opportunity to review that, we wanted to make sure that we outline specifically for parents and our students the expectations on the bus. That was a change that we made or we added to our Code of Conduct. We received a few comments about it, more praises than anything. We sent it to our board, and then that was approved. So that is one of the major changes that was added this year. There was also a change made to when the code applies, and that's gonna be at the very front of the book on pages 5 and 6. And I'll go through that again with you, but just so you know, any electronic device that is on our campus, we do have the right to search that device. So if it's a phone, if it's our computers, so we wanted to make sure that our students were aware of that as technology is continuing to grow every day and often interferes with some of the work that we're doing in the school. It's definitely a help, but sometimes it can hinder what we are doing as it relates to teaching and learning. One other change happened when we talked about being in possession of, they're not illegal drugs, but it's over-the-counter drugs, right? So some of our high school students are permitted to carry those around if they have a doctor's note or if they're old enough to carry it, such as your asthma pump, those types of things. Some of our students may also use Tylenol or Motrin during different times. Although they should take that to the school nurse, sometimes they are in possession of it, so we do find it necessary to place it in here. So if you think about things like NyQuil, Sudafed, things that we have to show our ID for, sometimes our students are in possession of that, and sometimes it's not used for the purpose it was designed or intended to be used for. So when those things happen, we need to be able to respond to it in the correct way. So we made a change to that with the elementary students by saying that they too can be suspended for that. Again, we don't want, that's not our first go-to as it relates to helping our students who may be in possession of those things because they may not know. But once we have warned and we've had conversations about it, then we need to be able to have a consequence for that to help them not do it again. Therefore, we needed to add it into our code of conduct because it was not there. So those are three major changes that were that happened this year. And again, if you have other questions or concerns around anything that may come up tonight, please make sure that you bring that to my attention. All right, so when is the student code of conduct applied? It's applied anytime that your child or friend is on our school property. So any of the schools, right? Off school property while attending or traveling to and from school, maybe to an athletic event when they are going to games outside of our county. The student code of conduct applies there. When using district property electronic resources, which we just spoke a little bit about. And believe it or not, conduct outside of school can cause us to have to use our code of conduct. Well, Dr. Tolbert, why is that? Well, if we have a student that have engaged in some illegal activities outside of school and they're charged with a felony and it can interrupt our learning environment, or we deem it, we find that it may cause issues with safety in the building, then we can apply the code of conduct for that student. So I won't give any specific examples because I'm sure you can think of a few in your mind where we would have to apply this. When that happens, then we take the necessary steps to make sure that we keep our students safe and our learning environment at a place where we're able to teach and our students are able to learn. Going on a scavenger hunt. Again, our elementary students would say, we're going on a bear hunt, but we are adults for the most part, so we're gonna go on a scavenger hunt. You should have a little green sheet of paper or a little square piece of paper. And if you do not, you're welcome to get one off the table. And it should have a number. And that number is your friend, right? Pages 13 through 31 of our student code of conduct outlines the severity levels aligned with the Georgia Department of Education suggested discipline matrix and the state reporting guidelines. So the numbers that you see in here are the numbers that when we code a behavior in campus, they're state reportable offenses, okay? So they get reported. That is how our state determines whether or not we're a safe, decent school sometimes. And also there's a suggested discipline matrix that aligns with the behavior that just says these are suggestions. This is only a guideline. So if our principals or other administrators find that there are some things in here that we have to bypass or add a little extra to, we are still able to do that because again, this is only a set of guidelines, all right? So want to make sure we understand that. But on that little green square that you have, there's a number. That number will tell you which behavior that you're going to be able to read and share with your neighbor. So for example, if I had number, let's just say 36, it's repeated offenses. Collection of offenses not previously assigned a state reportable action that occurs on a single or across multiple school days that leads to a state reportable disciplinary action. And then it says severity level 1, it explains what that is, severity level 2, what that is, and then severity level 3, and then what that is. Because there are 44 behaviors that are in here, we won't have enough time tonight to go through those, but I do want to make sure that you know how to use the code of conduct as a parent. So if you would please look through the code of conduct, pages 13 through 31, find the behavior that aligns with the number that's on your green tab, and turn to your elbow partner and share what that is. I'm gonna walk around and just poke my nose in a little bit. And I'm going to ask that you all come back to our attention, or gather your attention, should I say. And in the words of our elementary students and teachers, we're going to come together in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You guys are perfect. I appreciate it. Thank you. So we had an opportunity to look through the code of conduct, some of the prohibited behaviors. There were some questions that came up, so I do want to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to hear the questions, because it is something that may be beneficial for others that are watching and or others that are seated in the audience. So I'm going to ask that you ask your questions out loud as it relates to pages 13 through 31. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That is an awesome question. So his question is related to our severity levels and what takes place during that and how can you go from a severity level 1 to a severity level 3. So I'm going to see if I can't capture your concern and share it out in a way that we all can make sense of it, right? Because it can get confusing. There are 3 levels, severity levels, that are associated with our prohibited behaviors. By the time a student is at level 3, they have shown a pattern of behaviors. So anything that we were supposed to do as it relates to a parent conference, restorative practices, maybe a time with some behavior specialists and the other supports that we have in place for our students, those things would have naturally taken place most times by the time we get to a level 3 offense. Example, a fight. Sometimes we'll have fights, and depending on the level of the fight, the severity level of it, what type of disruption it caused in the building, and whether or not there was any harm that was done at that time, it could automatically escalate to a level 3. Well, during that time, we're having to talk to a parent. So that's the parent conference. We're going to apply the consequence, of course, but when the student gets ready to come back, we want to look at some of our restorative practices. And so that's a part of that. So those things naturally take place that are outlined in severity level 1 and 2. It naturally takes place for severity level 3 because it just is interwoven into the process. Any other questions about the code or those behaviors? Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. So there is a violation in our code that that's defined as student incivility. So student incivility are all those little small behaviors that are not necessarily state reportable, but that interfere with teaching and learning in the school, insubordination, being disrespectful, all of those types of behaviors. After a while, they start to add up, right? And so we have conversations, we've put in behavior supports, we've had parent meetings, we've had kid talks, all those great things have taken place, and you just continue to do those behaviors. You just repeatedly get in trouble. Well, now we're at a severity level 3, and believe it or not, sometimes those things can lead you into a hearing. And so we like to tell our students, although this may be very small to you, it is interrupting teaching and learning consistently in our classrooms. That is not allowed. We do not appreciate it because it's impacting everyone else that has access to a free and appropriate education. And now we have to take some different steps to make sure that we are providing you with the additional assistance you need to be able to not do this again. So that's where that comes from. Yes, a lot of little bit of pieces that come together. But again, this is just a suggested set of expectations that our board has adopted, but that our administrators will have to apply according to what is happening at that time. So we do have a little leeway with how we move throughout the severity levels, and then how some things or how some consequences are applied to what's happening. And those consequences are outlined in the matrix, and they have an X next to those areas that align with the severity levels. Any other questions around that work? All right, so my favorite part, most people would think, as a school administrator, we only like to look at the consequences. Well, our job is to help our students, is to help create that learning environment that's warm, that's welcoming, that's safe, and where we want for our students to be happy to come to, right? So what do we do before we start to apply the code of conduct? The first thing we would talk about is administrative timeout. You'll see a lot of that in our elementary schools where students are placed into a timeout or they're asked to go to another classroom. Sometimes you'll see it in middle school where they're asked to go to their content twin so that we're not getting in the way of their instruction, right? So those things are applied most often for student incivility, right? So now let's look at check-in, check-out. Typically, then that's one of the interventions that we use through MTSS. When we recognize that students have had some repeated offenses, we want to be able to assist them before it gets any further. We will sometimes implement check-in, check-out. That is when we identify a teacher or mentor in the building, another adult in the building, where that student goes in every morning. They check in with them. How's your day going? How are things going? And then that afternoon, they check out with them. How was your day? Did you meet your goal today? What do we need to do better tomorrow? And what did you do that made you great today? Differential reinforcement. Most people look at that as a token economy, and so you'll see sometimes that the catwalk stick, which is something that I'm not a huge fan of, just because sometimes it will embarrass a kid, but you may see some students earn stickers. They may earn extra time with one of their special teachers. They may, I don't know, earn extra recess or being offered an opportunity to sit quietly with another friend and play a game. All those things are kind of in there, but they're gonna look different depending on the student because we wanna meet the need of the student as we try to curve that behavior. Loss of privileges is just that. Sometimes we have to just take everything away. It's not what we want to do, but it works, right? I don't clean my room. My mom says I have to give her my cell phone. I bet you I clean my room tomorrow. PBS, that's positive behavior interventions and supports. All of our schools are actually working to become PBS certified, but that is having that system in our schools where we are promoting. Most time, I know at Hillsman it was PAWS, right? Where we are promoting those positive behaviors, and sometimes we would have house parties because we were divided into houses at that time at Hillsman, and so that was how we rewarded those things. But it's just a set of school expectations that everyone works to do, and there's a set of expectations for every area of the building. Parent conferences, we always want to make sure that our parents are aware of what's happening, be it if it's positive or negative. Our behavior specialists definitely play a huge role in us trying to reduce the number of infractions that we're having in school with some of our most challenging students. They go in, they observe students, they come up with what we call behavior intervention plans by conducting function or behavior analysis. And so theirs is more of what we call a tier 3 intervention where they're working with students on their behavior. So those are other things. Restorative practices is another tool that we use. I see Mr. Malik is here. He and I worked quite a bit last year in my previous role, but trying to help students to see, let's repair the harm that we have done to someone else, and having those conversations, those circles, so that we're all on one accord and understand what has happened so that we can all come back and promote great things in our building. MTSS is multi-tiered systems of support for our students. That's the new wording for RTI. RTI is now a part of MTSS, but it's a tiered system that we use to provide different interventions for our students. Of course, at Tier 3, those interventions become more frequent, and they're more, sorry, lost my word. Yes, it's individualized, they're more frequent, but we also monitor them more frequently as well. So we want to make sure students are really being targeted at that level. Most times it's about 3 to 5% of our population that we want to have or would like to have in that top tier, but that's just a little information there. And then we have restitution, which often sometimes comes about as part of the restorative circles because we talk about what can you do to fix what has been done wrong. Sometimes restitution comes from that. You put a hole in my wall, I don't want to suspend you. I want to give you an opportunity to come up on a Saturday and work to fix the wall. So we work around those things. Or you took something, you got to be able to pay it back. And then lastly are our wraparound meetings. And those are meetings where we have some of our most important individuals in our district, social workers, behavior specialists, administrative counselors, mental health experts, where we come together to really try to determine what is it that we need to do for this student or this family to provide the assistance so that we are not having to suspend them. Suspension should be our last option, although I'm sure there are some people that said, oh my God, Dr. Tolbert, for real? You just suspended some students. Yes, sometimes we have to, but when they come back, we still have to deal with the behaviors, and so we want to make sure that that's not something we're doing often. You put them out of school, you put them out of class, you put them out of class, we're in trouble, right? And so we want to make sure that we are definitely raising and producing some productive citizens in our community so they can continue to do the good work that's happening. So those are some of the behavior interventions and supports. Depending on what school you're at, they may look different, and especially at each level. So primary and secondary levels may implement some of the interventions differently, but for the most part, they're all the same. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. That is correct. And sometimes there are some behaviors that happen in school that are not being reflected at home, right? And so parents are saying, that's not happening at home, it's only happening at school, so what do we do about it? And so to bridge that gap between the home and the school, if we bring together both parties along with whatever members of our community that we can use to help mediate the situation, then we want to be able to do that. But we also want to use our services in the community, our mental health providers, believe it or not, some of our doctors that have worked directly with some of our families that may make us aware of some situations that we don't know about. Advantage is one that we work closely with. If you think about some of the mentors that are in our community, as well as, there are community leaders that are led through Terrence Thomas. They are phenomenal. They help to kind of serve as a liaison between the school as well as the community, because we are still working to build trust and we're almost there, but not everyone trusts the school. So having that circle there provides that extra piece of security for our family and our students so that they don't feel like it's the school against the house, if that makes sense. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
What is being done to make sure that behaviors that are being identified as incivil are accurately enforced, or I'm curious, like if a kid is told that their behavior is incivil,
Mm-hmm.
but that wasn't either the intention or isn't the expectation for that kid, and then they get identified as an incivil kid,
Mm-hmm.
we just keep
Escalating.
what's being done to it?
So the number one thing we want to make sure that we're doing is providing the support for our teachers. If they have strong classroom management, instructional practices are where they need to be, then oftentimes we can decrease the number of negative interactions that our students are having in that space. So of course we know some of our pre-K students are not going to sit for 45 minutes in a circle because they're up and running around. That's not necessarily that they're being disrespectful. That's just simply, I can't sit that long. But a teacher with good classroom management will be able to identify that. So being able to provide them with the tools that are necessary to support them in their classroom so that they can keep the expectations up here before we begin to label some of our students. So that's the number one intervention. Second of all is PEEP, is the positive behavior interventions and support. If we have a very, for lack of better words, tight or united system or support in the school where we're knowing how to support our teachers as well as our students in those spaces, and we're rewarding great behavior, and we have some things in place to help turn around the not wanted behaviors. I don't want to say negative because all of them are not negative, or we're trying to figure out, okay, Utevia is just talking a little too much in class. What's going on with her? She's not being disrespectful, but she talks too much and it's getting in the way of instruction. What do we do? That's when we start to have those MTSS conversations. Is it because she has an attention issue? Is it because she needs to be challenged? Because sometimes I could just be talking too much because I'm bored. But most of our teachers are really good about being able to identify that. So I wouldn't say that we are over-identifying students at this point with those violations under student incivility. Most times, example, sometimes skipping may come underneath that. Although we have a code for attendance, sometimes we can code skipping as part of that too. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're in civil. It just means that you're not following the school expectations. And now, what do we do when those things are not happening? So to be proactive, making sure our teachers are supported in the classroom with positive behavior management, as well as being able to recognize what they need to do within the class to help the student. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Is there like a, part of the PBS, is there like a cultural competency piece that allows like identification of, well, this actually is a positive behavior, it's just you don't recognize it as such, and so then that goes overlooked, and so then it becomes difficult for the student to understand, like,
Absolutely.
what I'm doing, what's showing you that I really enjoy this, but you're not interpreting it that way.
Absolutely. So we do have a lot of conversations around what's culturally acceptable and maybe what we are seeing. Disrespect is a good one, but maybe what you are viewing as being negative is something actually positive in where I'm being raised and where I'm being brought up. That is some of the work of our behavior specialists, but of course we're doing that work as administrators in the school as well. Our district has been able to bring in some experts around that and to help us be better able to identify what's really happening, as well as recognize our own biases around the work that we're doing in the classroom. So that is work. I do think that that is work we will continue to do under the leadership of our new superintendent, but Dr. Thomas has definitely made that a priority as we've spoken about equity quite a bit in our district. Yes, ma'am.
And actually, that's what I wanted to speak about, is looking at the behavior. I have worked in the district, I've worked in the school districts in Georgia for 20 years actually, I've worked in the district. I think that we should put a lot more emphasis on these. I think keepers get started, and then it goes from kid to kid. When you are giving people kids things, the people really, that makes them happy, that they enjoy, then I think they'll function a lot better. I think back to just the past couple of weeks at Central and Cedar, where we had prom. You know, it went really well. Just came back Monday, just talking, happy, having a good time. I think that, you know, the emphasis, I think a lot more emphasis should be put on showing when I was in school, when I was 66 years old, I had fun in school. So because we had fun, a lot of this other stuff wasn't happening because we had fun.
Right.
I just think that whoever sits up to this should really put a lot more emphasis, and I think once you put more emphasis, a lot more emphasis.
I agree. I do believe that all of our schools are working to have a PBIS team, and that is the work that we're doing. I know that a team at Cedar recently went to training. Tessa Barbazan is working really hard to get that work moving as quickly as possible so that we can allow our students to have fun while holding them accountable to our student code of conduct.
That's why I think, just like this, when we're allowing people to do things, and I think we have to not add that part. We should just let people be people and give them that, let them have that fun. And I think once we always attach it to, we always attach the good to the consequences.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think we should separate it. Focus on, because as a behavior interventionist, I focus on the positive. I don't feed into, I think it's called avoidance. And dissipate, even with your own kids, even with your own wife and husband. I think, you know, we should, even in a conversation, that the verbiage should be different, the thought should be maybe different. I think we have to take the emphasis, so much emphasis. You got, what, 9 or 10?
I understand. I think as we begin to learn more, or as we learn more about PBIS, then we will begin to better understand what we need to do to make sure that we are doing just that, that we're focusing more on the positive and not on the negative. However, part of PBIS, there includes consequences, right? So we don't want it to get to a point where we're just giving, and we're not holding students accountable, because then that defeats some of the work that we're trying to do. But I do agree that when students feel safe and they are engaged and they have a voice in what's happening with them, those behaviors begin to change, and then you will start to use consequences less than what we are doing now. So I do agree with that to some extent, but I think that's or I know that that is a part of the work of PBIS. So we are continuing to do that work, and you should see a lot more of it, more evidence of it more in all of the schools soon. Yes, sir. So transparency. So this is the first step, is allowing everyone to be able to ask questions about the code of conduct. I also think more of the parent meetings that are happening at the school levels, when you're going in and you're talking to the administrators around what's happening in the building. Some of that work is done through PTSO. Some of it is done through LSGT. So parents and our community members definitely have a voice. The trust piece comes with the continuing to work and being transparent about what's happening. I know that is a lot of the work that we're doing in Clarke County, especially in some of our schools where we're trying to be honest, like, look, this is what's happening. Here's where we're struggling. Here's where we're doing great. How can we come together to do that? And it's always been my belief that if we come together more as a community, then we can do the work that needs to be done in the school. But as long as we continue to be divided and we play that school against the community or school against home, we're never going to get where we need to be. And that's as one. And so we promote the one CCSD or CCSD one, but we really, really need to get there and begin to trust the work. And as soon as that happens, and we see some evidence of it happening or occurring, as soon as we get to where we need to be, you're going to see things turn around. And I'm believing that, I know that, and I'm sure that it's happening in a lot of our buildings at this point. Right. That is correct. I agree with you 100%, right? COVID definitely had some negative consequences on teaching and learning, but it also taught us a lot about how to engage our community in the work that we're doing in our school district. I made more connections via Zoom with parents than I ever have before as a teacher or an educator in the district, because it was more convenient for parents. And quite honestly, it was convenient for me as a parent because I could just log in online from work and be able to have a conversation with my child's teacher as opposed to trying to arrange the time. So I think there was some positive and some negative impacts of COVID. However, I do think that it did hurt us, and I do know that all of our teachers, leaders, and administrators at the district level are working to make sure we're making up for that lost learning. It may take us a little while, but we're definitely on a road to what I call recovery with that. And so we're seeing evidence of it already, and I'm excited about it. Mhm. 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 Yeah. Definitely. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Mhm. 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 Yes, ma'am. I will pass that on. I do know in several of our schools, we do student incentive surveys so we can see what it is that they want. Most times on our LSGT teams, there are students that are members of those teams. I know at Cedar, and I can't speak for some of our other schools, that we do have our student council that actually offers a lot of input on what happens as it relates to some of the incentives that we're doing and even some of the consequences that are taking place. Believe it or not, Auntie, our students are probably a little harsher than we are with some things, but they definitely have a voice. Mhm. Mhm. That is true. However, I do believe that there's been a very diverse group of students chosen that have relationships with quite a few of our students. And so example, at our pep rally, they were able to select some of our students to go there. That was not a Dr. Tolbert thing. That was honestly our students planning that out. And it ended up being a huge success because of the voices of our students. And so we will continue to do that, and I'm sure all of the other schools are doing it as well. But I think we have to start somewhere first. We have to have a foundation and then build from that foundation to get to the level where you are. And again, that comes with trust, that comes with collaboration, and it definitely comes with communication. So the more we do those things, then the more opportunities we can provide our students, our communities, and our teachers with being successful with teaching and learning. I'll keep going back to that because that's the foundation of the work. So, yes, sir, I'm sorry.
You mentioned like PTOs and LSUTs as vehicles for family engagement. We know that those aren't like ideal vehicles for family engagement just across the board. Like, are there other ways that the district has like formalized
Yes, so I know I think we have an upcoming CCSD Family Day. Our director of, help me out, Family and Community Engagements, and we do have our chief of, yes, they have some very long titles, and sometimes I can't remember those, so they have to help me out. But they are here, and they are definitely working to provide those additional opportunities. So if you would like to speak to them more about the things that are being done outside of schools to engage our families, then they are available. However, we are putting forth more effort in including our families outside of the walls of the schools. Mhm. Mhm. So many opportunities for everyone to get involved. All right. So thank you for all of your questions and great conversations around the work. This is work that we will continue. As I mentioned, this is the first of several parent universities. So feel free to come back to the one on restorative practices so that we can continue to talk about the great things that we're doing. So we're going to bring it to a close. You should be able to answer all of these questions. So just as we do in our classroom, this is called a closing exercise or a closing exit ticket. So in order for you to leave, you should be able to answer these questions. Are you ready? All right, so what is the student code of conduct? Expectations, behavior expectations that are adopted by who? Absolutely. Auntie, you were listening. All right, what is the purpose of the student code of conduct? Absolutely. Gosh, I'm telling you, I'm a great teacher. I pat myself on the back. All right, so name 3 prohibited behaviors listed in the student code of conduct. You all had the worst ones. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. Vandalism. Computer, he had the better one out of all of you. But thank you for knowing where those are. Pages 13 through 31, a total of 44, and those are state reportable offenses. All right, so here's the big one. What are the parents' rights and responsibilities as they relate to the student code of conduct? Discussing them? Do the parents have a say-so in the code of conduct? You all get to provide comments about that and provide us with some feedback about what's in there and or what shouldn't be in there. So you definitely have a say. But the biggest part of it is ensuring that your students are aware of the information that's in there along with the schools and holding them accountable for both the positive and the negative pieces that are there. So with that being said, I think we have answered or asked all of our questions and have gotten our answers. I did say at the very beginning we were going to hold them until the end, but you all were burning for information. So as a good teacher would do, we adjust on our feet and we go ahead and allow those things to take place so that learning can take place. And that definitely happened tonight. So on behalf of Clarke County School District, we'd like to thank you for coming in tonight and engaging in this work. And I look forward to seeing you all in our next parent university. Yes, ma'am. So I am going to let Soraya tell you that next date for that as Alex, do you know the date of the next parent university? Tuesday, October the 11th on trauma. So please come and join our trauma specialists as they provide you with some more great information. Again, thank you, and I'll see you all around. Thank you.